It's a kind of magic.
Right, I think we've got the next caller.
Yep. Hi. Can you all hear me?
We can indeed. Yep. Welcome to the show.
Good. Often when you're dealing online with religious people, it's sort of like, you know, the extremes, so it's going to be creationists, etc. And often you do get the conflation that atheism is evolution. And considering that Dr. Myers is a biologist, I got a question from a genuinely interested creationist, actually genuinely interested for once. And she asked what the best piece of evidence for evolutionary theory is. I was just wondering what the panel's thoughts on what the best piece is.
Well, we'll all have a different answer for that.
Yeah.
Well, you know, I like to say that if you take a bacterial culture and watch it over time, you can see evolution happen in front of your eyes. You don't even have to go look at fossils or anything. You can see it happen.
Phylogenetically also, it's impossible to say that you did not evolve from apes when we are still apes.
Mm-hmm. And I'd have a more complex answer. I'd say...
I hope so. You're the professor.
Okay, I have permission to go on at length? Is that what you...
Please do. No, you asked for your best piece of evidence.
Well, the very best piece of evidence is not one piece of evidence, it's the synthesis, it's the coherence of a whole body of evidence that all points in exactly the same direction. That, you know, if you look at the fossil evidence, if you look at the molecular evidence, it's all saying the same message, common descent. If you look at the genetic evidence and molecular evidence, it's all saying the same thing. It's the mechanism is, you know, chance variation filtered through natural selection. And it all hangs together beautifully. It's, you know, this is the thing that's so beautiful about evolutionary theories, that when you study it, it all works. It's like this. It makes the entirety of life on this planet a work of art that just fits together so beautifully, where everything is generated by mechanisms we can understand, and it works so elegantly. And that's what screams to me that the answer is these natural processes of evolutionary biology. You know, I didn't go on too long, see?
No, you were far too brief, and in fact so brief, I've not lined up the next caller. Would you like to come back on that, Anonymous Mouse?
I think my answer was pretty much PZ's, but obviously a lot less educated than that. I basically said, all the evidence points to it. It all converges that we've got a correct theory here.
Yeah, I mean, if you want the simple, discrete piece of evidence, I would say that it's the molecular evidence that shows the inheritance of errors between different lineages. So if you get on the web and you go to the Talk Origins website, search for plagiarized errors. And what it is there's this long document there that talks about all these molecular variants where what we see preserved in the genome are fragments and bits and pieces of broken genes from the past. And we can see that these are inherited in different lineages in beautiful ways. I mean, the classic example is the vitamin C enzyme, which is broken in us. You know, we can't synthesize vitamin C, which is why we get scurvy if we go on long sea voyages without citrus fruits. And all of the primates most closely related have the same error. Now, why would a god have created us with this error, and also coincidentally happen to have created all the other creatures that are most closely related, according to evolutionary theory, with exactly the same error?
I can tell you that.
Oh.
Common design, common designer. No, but on a serious note, I'm no expert in this field, so I can't really comment on it, but what I can comment on is the alternatives that are put forward.
Right. And
when you hear someone like Ray Comfort telling you, well, a dog's never given birth to anything other than a dog. I mean, it is face palming, isn't it? Yeah. Because if it did happen, it would destroy evolutionary theory overnight. It would be the end of it. And they think this is actually a positive argument in their favor.
Yes. Now, but I would answer the common design, common designer argument by saying that, yeah, that might be true for functional elements of the genome, where we actually have a purpose, that defined physiologically for these things. We could say, yeah, that a dog and a human being both need these particular salivary enzymes to digest their food. Okay, but what I'm talking about are errors. These are pseudogenes. These are broken genes. These are genes that have experienced a serious error in their history. There is no functional reason for the designer to have added this baggage of broken genes to all of these organisms, and to have only added that baggage to certain organisms that are related by common descent. That we explain by common descent.
But then, whoever listened to these arguments? Have you ever met a creationist who said, "Oh, yeah, that makes sense. You're right"? It's not about how good the arguments are.
It depends on the context, and you're right that these are people who have not acquired this belief by rational evaluation of the evidence, and so you can't talk them out of that.
I do have to make one note. There are people who are immersed in their culture, and everybody believes this way, and so they've grown up believing that way. It is possible to take somebody from that culture and explain the real data to them and have them change their mind, and they actually
Right.
somebody. It depends. Like I said, they come to a crossroads. When you're faced with the evidence, when you start debating creationism and you start getting the information, you have to make a decision. Do I remain honest or do I remain creationist? And there are some people that decide, I'm not going to be a creationist anymore. I married one.
Yeah. And I'd also add that there are circumstances where it does work. That in the classroom, for instance, it's fairly effective. That here you've got, I go through this every year. I get a crop of students. There's always a sprinkling of creationists among them. And what will happen is we'll be discussing this stuff, and there's a combination of things that influence them. One is they actually have to master the knowledge about how we understood these things to have occurred. They have, and it's not me saying, memorize this detail, you need to know this. It's, here's this really interesting phenomenon, here's how it happened. Please understand the mechanisms that generate this interesting phenomenon. So they're learning it that way. And then the other important thing is peer pressure. It really works. That you've got a classroom, you've got a whole bunch of students, a lot of them are getting it, they're understanding what's going on here, and they're explaining it to each other, and all of a sudden the creationist is alone and isolated. And he's going to ask himself, why am I thinking this way rather than the way all my peers are doing? And that starts to work. I mean, it's not infallible, and that doesn't mean they collapse. I mean, I wouldn't, if I'm in a church and I'm in a room full of Christians, I don't suddenly say, oh well, maybe I should. But it does get them thinking, and that's the most important thing: is get them thinking, get them cogitating over these processes, and you don't get this sudden revelation. It's not religious. It takes some time to work through this, but eventually it gets through it.
Do you ever refer to all the studies that show that atheists have much better sex lives?
I'm teaching classes full of 18 to 22-year-olds. I cannot give them advice on sex.
And not only that, but Ted Haggard already claimed the same data in his favor.
Yeah.
And then I guess went out and
tried
to prove it.
But you're right, it's true. It's just that they're not going to hear it from a 50-year-old.